Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got a big show lined up for you today. All right, let's get into this. The truth has come out about why Schlossnagle left Texas A&M.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
And we covered this yesterday, and I went on a theory, and it's very rare when I have a theory that comes to play out like this so quickly. And I took a lot of grief over it. I had comments, oh no, Texas A&M, that had nothing to do with why he left. I was like, I don't know. I think it did. Sure enough, we get information today that it played a big role. So we're going to get into all of that, and I'm going to bring the receipts. All right, now ever since the loss of Texas A&M against Tennessee, and then the subsequent boom, I'm going to Texas immediately, and of course, he ripped a reporter for even asking the question, and then within 24 hours, turns out he had not been truthful about his response to that. And a lot of people say he bald-faced lied. He kind of did lie, honestly. But it was sort of one of those coaches' lies, which they do on a fairly regular basis. I still blame the Texas athletic director for that as much as anything. Granted, Schlossnagle totally screwed up. He could not have mishandled that press conference in any, it was just a disaster. Honestly, a complete disaster, and made him look like a fool. Or worse.
This man is a coward. Cowards.
But the athletic director of Texas firing their coach with 24 hours before the big final game that he was getting ready to coach in was the worst timing imaginable. You knew he was going to get asked. And sure enough, he got asked right after losing the game, which he's already got sour grapes like you can't believe, which is totally understandable. So he's already in a horrible mood. And then the Texas AD puts him in this terrible spot where he's going to get asked. And what's he going to do? What he should have done was say, I'm not even going to talk about that right now. I'm worried about my guys, and just walked on out. But he had to go into the whole melodrama of everything he's given up to take the $1.3 million a year at Texas A&M, which poor fella, I don't know how he got by on such a little paltry amount of money.
There you go. There you go. There you go.
I mean, inflation is pretty bad. But anyway, I'd be mad at the athletic director as much as anything. But anyway, let's get into the Schlossnagle. He came out and he said, okay, this is why I left. And there's some truth to it. There's also some BS in it as well. And this is on Yahoo Sports by Jack Bear. It says, Texas baseball coach says he left Texas A&M after the new AD told him it's okay to move on. There's way more to it than that, okay? That's just part of it. Talks about how much he's getting ripped by the Aggies and, you know, all that. He claimed that Trev Alberts, who is the Texas A&M athletic director, he's new, told him before the NCAA tournament regional game that it'd be okay to move on. So let's get into this. Understand, let me give you the preface of this. They were spending $80 million, the AD before Trev Alberts, that they were spending $80 million on the baseball stadium. And he wanted it to be this awesome place. And he was promised it was going to happen. They were going to spend all this money, etc. And he wanted it to be twice as big as it currently is. He wanted to have the best baseball stadium in the country, and they were working on it. Well, obviously, when they fired Jimbo Fisher, and of course they had to change athletic directors and all of that, that was $76 million they had to come up with. And I told you folks yesterday that that almost certainly played a role because they let like 16 people go from the athletic department, including a bunch of assistant athletic directors and people that were involved with the baseball program as well. One key guy that really upset Schlossnagle. And he talked about how it left a hole in the leadership and all that kind of stuff. So obviously Schloss was complaining about it and was upset that, hey, you know, am I going to get this $80 million? Are we going to do this baseball stadium, etc.? And he was upset about his assistant athletic director that was helping him with the baseball team being let go. And he was concerned about the finances at Texas A&M because obviously there's so many changes going on with the NCAA settlement and the 20% out to shared revenue with the players and all that. So everything's changing in athletics. And Texas A&M, there's bigger changes than about anywhere because of the Jimbo Fisher effect. Anyway, let's get into what he said happened. And again, this is from Schlossnagle. Said, Trev came to me before the regional to have a conversation. He asked me if I was frustrated. He said, I told him that I had some frustration with how slow the ballpark process was going and that it was tough to operate without a sports administrator, the guy that got let go. He said, but I was committed to working through it. He then made a comment to me, kind of comparing his situation of leaving his alma mater in Nebraska. He said to me, you know, Jim, if you ever don't feel like this is the place for you, that's okay. It's okay to move on. He said, I was a little taken aback by that, and that was the moment that I began to think that maybe this wasn't going to work out. He said, no one ever contacted me or my agent about new contract for our staff, so I just decided to focus on getting our team to Omaha and winning, blah, blah, blah. Okay. That makes me, I'm a little bit suspect of that last part there, because it sounds like maybe to me, it sounds like maybe he started having conversations with the Texas AD he's good buddies with, but I can't prove that. So that's just pure speculation on my part. But I've been pretty good at this speculation stuff. So anyway, talks about the Texas A&M Board of Regents had approved $80 million stadium renovation. He said Schlossnagle had been very clear about what he wanted to see from the stadium. He wants a new ballpark that doubles the size of Olsen Field that could essentially be the Camden Yards of college baseball. Said Alberts, who had previously been the AD at Nebraska. And also it's important to realize that the Texas A&M AD Trev Alberts declines response to Schlossnagle's "it's okay to move on" assertion. So there's been no response to that yet. I would think there would be. The Texas A&M guy's got to pretty much say something. He's going to have to either say, yeah, I said that, or no, he totally misrepresented it. But something needs to be said there for sure. And here's another article that talks about that. He said, I would say that with everything that was going on within the department financially, the agreement we made to begin construction, et cetera, began to slow down. And that was disappointing. He said, then we had the football coaching change with Jimbo Fisher's firing that eventually led to a new athletic director, which always makes any coach wonder about the direction of things. Said in late April, they laid off my sports administrator, Chris Park, during the season when we were ranked #1 in the country. That created a vacuum of leadership for our program. Now, here's the part that I got to question this, and this is another article. Said Schlossnagle said, Chris and I have always talked pretty regularly over the years, friends, the athletic director at Texas. He said, we never talked seriously about me going to Texas until the very end. We landed back in College Station after Omaha. I met with a few players. I could face-to-face let them know this could happen and that due to the NCAA rules, I wouldn't be able to talk to them again. Chris met me at my house that day. We spoke for about 2 hours, and then I made my decision and went to Austin. Really? See, there's he loses me right there. So you hadn't talked seriously about it at all for months, but then suddenly within 2 hours you make a life-changing decision, and no, I'm not going with that. See, that's where it just, I can understand him being frustrated about the stadium. I can understand him being frustrated about the guy getting fired and having to wait on the stadium because they couldn't do any more debt. They were going to have to raise the money because of the $76 million going to Jimbo. I understand all that. But this business that he made the decision in 2 hours and hadn't really seriously talked about it, I'm not buying that. Sorry. You can sell that somewhere else. And here's the thing. If you don't believe him about one thing, it's real easy to not believe him about other stuff. Now we're going to talk about Tony Vitello. There is talk, and this is so typical, that Texas A&M is going to try to get him to go to College Station and take over Texas A&M. Folks, that's not going to happen. I'll just go ahead and tell you. And there's talk of it on social media. It says A&M needs to back up the truck to Tony Vitello. He's a culture builder, a proven winner, and is familiar with the state of Texas. Most importantly, he reportedly hates Jim Schlossnagle. You're not getting Tony. All right, we're spending $100 million on Lindsey Nelson Stadium. It's going to be epic. It's going to be one of the best baseball stadiums in the country, and no expense is being spared. Tony's getting a new contract as we speak. I've heard that from multiple people. And do you honestly think this guy's leaving this team? There is no way. He is so beloved in the city of Knoxville. He's not Schlossnagle, who doesn't have much of a personality. This guy's got a ton of personality. Knoxville loves him, the team does, and he loves them back. It's a very mutual thing. Y'all need to find a good coach, and I'm sure you will. Honestly, after what Schlossnagle did to you, I think you're better off. I would be pissed. Somebody does that kind of crap to you. No, No, I'd be ready for him to go. He's a transaction guy anyway. You want somebody that's got some passion and that cares about the university and cares about the players. And we've had players come out and say, you know, he was never respectful towards me and things like that. That's not good. You'll never hear anybody say that about Tony, any former player or current player. You just don't. They'll run through a wall for the dude. So anyway, for the Vols fans out there, just don't let them even get in your head over that. Look, I understand wanting to get him. I do, completely. But it won't happen. So anyway, calm down, Vols fans. But I did want to cover this because I had a very sneaking suspicion that Jimbo Fisher was heavily involved in this.
Can I do that? Yeah!
Now let's talk a little bit about Jimbo Fisher. Did he play a role in this in any way? Back in April, Texas A&M's new athletic director had to make cuts. Now, understand, they owe Jimbo $76 million. It's the biggest buyout in the history of college football. There's never been any. Okay, so that was yesterday. And then here was the end of this. That according to Alberts, this move has no connection to the $76 million buyout that Texas A&M owes Coach Jimbo Fisher.
You serious?
When do you know when somebody's trying to subvert or try to get you to look away? Is when they directly say it has nothing to do with it. $76 million has nothing to do with you cutting your expenses and your budget? Do you think we're idiots? Of course it had something to do with it. Okay, so anyway, before anybody says, no, you didn't, yeah, I did.
How's bragging camp going?
I did. It was obvious. It had to have something to do with it. It just did. So anyway, I did want to cover this. The truth has come out. I knew that had to play some form of role in this, but that's not, at least he came out and said what it was. The way he handled it was terrible, horrible. I don't believe him for a minute that he made a decision in 2 hours and he hadn't seriously talked about it prior to that. I don't believe that for a second. And honestly, Texas A&M, you're better off. You just are. I've thought about this a lot, and it's just, you want to find your own Tony Vitello. And y'all have got the money to do so. You're in Texas. You got all that oil money. You know, you got plenty of J.R. Ewings hanging around there that'll be happy to help Texas A&M, and you'll get through this whole Jimbo Fisher nonsense. $76 million is a ton of money, but it's not for oil men. So you'll get it squared away.
Haven't you noticed? You gotta be a man to play in my league.
Anyway, I did want to cover this. And if you like this type of content and these sports stories, hit this little button right here. Will not cost you a dime, and I would appreciate it. And right over here is the most recent video YouTube thinks you'll enjoy. And we'll see you next time on Sports Talk Jay.